Assalamu alaikum and welcome to our Tuesday evening Zoom session here on the Convert Club, hosted by Al-Manar, coming to you from London, but broadcasting all around the world. Tonight, we're very grateful to welcome our special guest, Yahya Birt, author, community historian, activist, and hopefully book writer of his own biography soon as well. Well, let's see if we can persuade him. Yahya has a very interesting journey to Islam that he very kindly agreed to share with us. The highs, the lows, the good points, the bad points, and the challenges, as well as conclusions and perhaps tips for how we can do this in our at home, so to say, or any newcomers, what you might recommend. So we're aiming to cover quite a lot of themes, but I'd like to just hand over to Yahya yourself. Yahya, welcome, 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 fellow convert, and thank you for being so brave to clear all the controversies and actually tell us from the horse's mouth, so to say, what it really was like for you to convert, son of a famous BBC director. You're very much sort of from the establishment in that sense, and you became a Muslim. How did your family react? How did your professional environment react? Please tell us all. Bismillah.
So no pressure there then. Alhamdulillah.
And thank you for being with us.
Alhamdulillah, it's a great pleasure. Thank you for having me back, Kristiane. And it's a great pleasure to speak in a convert space. Yeah, so basically I have two intentions with what I'm saying tonight. The first is to kind of, in a very short and brief way, just set the record straight about my conversion, because for reasons best known to Providence, for some reason my conversion has become news 37 years after it happened. There's been all these memes and things shared. I think most of them are coming from the subcontinent and elsewhere, but just as if my conversion just happened recently. And there's lots of very, very strange AI pictures and strange interpretations and things floating around online. So I thought that I should just try and forlornly set the record straight. I think the second thing I want to do is more important, which is that actually for those who have recently become Muslim, I thought I would share my experience of having been a Muslim for, in my fourth decade of being a Muslim. And I wanted to share that experience as well. Really, I see over the years, I've seen a lot of, most of us come into the house of Islam with great excitement and but also naivety and lack of knowledge and understanding, not really just religious knowledge, but cultural knowledge and historical knowledge and all kinds of things. So one of the things I wanted to do really is to sort of, I hope that in sharing my journey, I hope that I can allay some naivety, but also avoid cynicism, because I've seen people burn out or get burnt, and they become cynical. So I think between naivety and cynicism is the pathway of wisdom. So that's why I think it's important to share our whole journey, not just our Shahada, but actually our whole journey through the House of Islam. And it's not to blame anyone. It's just a kind of mutual reflection and learning, inshallah. So shall I just get on to the Shahada bit, Kristiane, or?
Well, absolutely. So how did it even come to the Shahada? How did you, in your world, hear about Islam, and what made you, want to take the Shahada? Perhaps start a little before the Shahada.
Well, I mean, I think I'm not going to say too much, because there are a couple of very good video interviews I've done. One is with Al-Hiwar channel. It's an Arab TV channel in English, but with Arabic subtitles. And another one I did with the Turkish TV channel, Makra channel. So they're both on YouTube and they're free to view. So I'll tell the stories told at greater length there than I can say tonight. But basically, let me say that I came from a family who had moved away from Christianity. Both my parents had, and we were not brought up as Christians. I was baptized a Catholic to placate my grandfather, but that was the only reason why I was baptized. And I was born prematurely, and they weren't sure that I would survive. And I think I was baptized to placate him in the neonatal unit within Shaw General Hospital in 1968. So I when I was at college, I met a wisecracking, my own version of a friend of God. He was a wisecracking metallurgist from Lahore. He'd come to do a PhD in metal sciences at the University of Manchester. I didn't have any brothers. He was like a brother to me. I knew him for 4 years. He didn't give me dawah. He sort of had the great character that Islam teaches of compassion and kindness and hospitality and a deep spirituality, but one that was one of actions rather than words, and how he was with people. So after about 4 years, I finally figured out that this might have something to do with Islam. So because I trusted him, I took the Shahada without really asking too many questions. I took the Shahada, but it was a bit like jumping into the deep end without any flotation device or without having had any swimming lessons. My mother died recently in September last year, and going through all of her effects and so on, I came across her letters and came across some letters she'd written to an old college friend of hers, and I knew that she had been, wasn't happy about my conversion, but I wasn't quite prepared for what I read, which was how scathing she was about it to one of her oldest friends in her letter. That doesn't define our whole relationship over 37 years that I was a Muslim before her death, but it took me back to a moment where they hoped that my conversion was a fad that would pass. It was me going through a bumpy ride in life, and that I was clutching at straws, that eventually I would come to my senses, and I would I would see the light and leave Islam. So I mean, the brother who brought me to Islam, he was part of the Tablighi Jamaat, which is a global Islamic revivalist movement. It's sort of about to celebrate its 100th anniversary. It was established in India in the late 1920s as a way of counteracting the conversion of Indian Muslims to Hinduism. And there was a forced conversion movement in the late 1920s in India. And from that beginning, it became a global movement, and it was very active in Britain in the 1990s, and it still is today. So I was very much involved with that movement for the first 3 years. It's a pietistic movement. The focus is on brotherhood, on sacrifice, and on preaching, but not to non-Muslims, actually. It's really about the revival of faith amongst Muslims, calling people to pray in the mosque and so on. It's, in some ways, it's very amenable as somewhere where you can learn the fundamentals of religion. But for me personally, if somebody's intellectually curious, its education system is meant to be basic and introductory. It's not it wouldn't answer all your questions that you might have. But I look back on it with great affection, and certainly, there are many things I think they teach and do that are exceedingly important. And not least is a kind of simplicity, a spirit of sacrifice. I think these are very important things that any revival movement in Islam needs. I returned to college to to SOAS in 1992. That was a rude awakening for me. In some ways, I'd been rather sheltered in the Tablighi Jamaat. They discouraged talk of politics. They discouraged talk even of, legal differences within Islam. The focus is on fundamentals. So I kind of landed in the middle of the kind of Muslim student revivalist scene of the early 1990s, which was very active in London. You had the Salafi movement was emerging, blowing up on campuses really for the first time. You had Hizb ut-Tahrir, which was recently banned a few years ago, but that was cropping up on campuses. The Salman Rushdie affair had happened 3 years earlier, and that galvanized or brought British Muslims into the political limelight in Britain. You had the first Gulf War, and then you had the Bosnian War. And so the whole student scene was sort of in ferment of debates about creedal matters, debates about politics, debates about foreign policy issues. So it was a very lively scene. I got stuck in as the president of vice president of the Islamic Society at SOAS, and we tried to run it in an inclusive ecumenical way, and but we had a kind of running battles with Hizb ut-Tahrir, which saw SOAS as a central recruiting ground for the University of London, and they'd been banned on other campuses. We argued for them not to be banned in SOAS. It was on the cards. At the same time, we actually took a stand against some very anti-Semitic statements they were making. Of course, our ISOC was promoting Palestine activism, but the Hizb ut-Tahrir the young men involved in it were very confrontational. So I got hounded by them for about a whole semester. They literally stalked me across campus, cornering me one day after another, accusing me of being a spy, an establishment spy, brought in to, create havoc and division amongst Muslim students. I mean, what we were trying to do was to hold the Muslim student body together. Me and Maulana Ismail Gangat, who was the president, we were trying to ecumenically hold the vast majority of Muslim students at SOAS together. But obviously these young men thought differently. And I was still very naive. I was hurt by this. I thought, this is too much. I'm not enjoying this. And I really fell away from community, from the student scene, from practice. I was sort of hanging on by my fingernails. I would go to Friday prayers, but really I kind of just checked out. And the other thing that happened to me, I guess, when I was at SOAS was that I was introduced to doing a degree Arabic and a degree in comparative religion. I was introduced to the most skeptical forms of Orientalism that were, SOAS was a hothouse for super skeptical Orientalism at that time. And so I was exposed to all of those ideas as well as, modern Islamic intellectual history and Islamic reformism and so on. And all these things sort of left a mark on me. So I came out of SOAS, and SOAS a bit detached from community, but still with the toehold. And I in the next few years, in London, I kind of floated around some smaller groups that I would describe as exploratory spaces amongst Muslim intellectuals who were trying to wrestle with questions of modernity and faith and so on. And I was involved in those various endeavors. But I didn't feel like I had a spiritual home. And then things really turned around about 1997. So I'd been a Muslim for 8 years at that point. And, like many converts, I basically, we didn't have a family structure. I was at home. On Eid day, you'd go and pray, you'd come back, and you would just be on your own. Eid day was not a celebratory event. for you. Um,
And
there were,
how did your parents, meet you? Your father, Lord Birt. I mean, how did he, take you being Muslim, and your mom? I mean, were they supportive in any way or quite against you,
I mean,
your journey?
they were good secular liberals. So, on paper, well, they believed in freedom of choice, and people finding their own path. But privately, and this came through anyway, they really didn't, obviously thought it was a bad thing that I'd become Muslim. It wasn't the done thing, and
They
probably
didn't
was.
they didn't find out about it and actually
No, no,
learn
no.
from
Well, I
you.
mean, they knew I didn't hide my conversion. I told them. But what I'm trying to say is that they they found it. They struggled between their liberal values of freedom of religion and that kind of thing versus their kind of Western values of sort of civilizational superiority. That basically, why would you be religious? Why would you be a Muslim? It wasn't something they understood. I mean, it wasn't the done thing.
And
Um,
did they start reading books about it to try and understand it better? What you suddenly
Well, over the years, they did engage in their own way. I mean, I'm talking prior to me having a family, getting married, and having kids, which I think can come to that later on. But prior to that, I think they didn't engage that much. I think it was more when I got married that they
yeah,
traveled more to Muslim world. They did some reading on their own bat and that kind
good.
of thing, but really nothing devotional. It was more like Islam as a civilization, or Islam in history. It wasn't a spiritual engagement. It was just a kind of a background research engagement, I would say.
But just to understand how similar Islam is to, Christianity, for example. I mean, I had struggles explaining to my parents, and I really took a lot of time. Eventually, I wrote my own book to also for them to read it, to understand it all better. They just didn't interest them enough to actually pick up books and start researching. But that's fine. It's
I
everybody is
think
busy.
guidance is in Allah's hands.
Yeah,
I was advised for many years to just show them good character, serve them, make them see. And my mum recognized, at least towards the end of her life, that she recognized Islam and been good for me.
yeah,
It
my
was
mom too.
it wasn't something that she wanted for herself. I mean,
Yeah,
my son valiantly gave her dawah, in her last few weeks of her life, and she tearfully she told me she just couldn't say the words if she didn't believe them. you know.
yeah,
So that was painful for us, but that's
yeah,
just the reality of what happens. You have to accept
yeah.
people's choices at the end of the day. Um,
But it's lovely that she actually saw that Islam turned you into a better human being. It was good for you.
well, I hope so. She wasn't just being a
Yeah, that's a
mum.
very, very nice
She wasn't just being a
contribution.
mum. But anyway, I think so. I think she meant that. And so basically, obviously for many of us, we realize when we're married into a Muslim family, for those of converts who do marry into a Muslim family, that really the kind of operational cornerstone of the Ummah today is the family. Actually, the bit that's still kind of working, right, is these huge extended families, which are very shocking for somebody of a Western European or North American background, because we're so thoroughly individualized. Our social sense of ourselves is largely, primarily as individuals. Family is second, whereas still in many Muslim cultures, families first, individualism is second. So there's like a collectivism there, which is a big. It takes a lot of adjusting, but it's a big. I always say to people, converting was one thing, marrying into a Muslim family was another whole ball game, and and then having kids as well on top of that. So I think that's a very kind of anchoring thing. I think at that point, I think my parents gave up all hope that I would somehow leave Islam. uh,
Very
and
brave.
but
And how were you taken in by the new Muslim family? Were you respected as a proper Muslim or? Still a bit of
Oh,
an
they're a
outsider?
wonderful family. Their origins are from Gujarat, which is a state in the westernmost state in India. They were a very interesting family who had traveled, and they were learned and cosmopolitan in their own way. Big family, very lively, humorous, and respected individualism actually in Maverick. So I fit right in that
Good.
sense. They were very accepting of my differences as well, and respectful. So I would consider it as a great blessing.
Brilliant.
Or I can also say, alhamdulillah, I think I picked well, and that's important as well. You have to you have to be considered and make the right choice, as well. It's important not to jump into these things. And I'd been a Muslim for 8 years or so before I got married, and one of the myths is that I converted when I got married. So there's a lot of newspaper report around that I converted 8 years later than I actually did, because some of the well, after we got married, the Daily Mail did a big splash, shock horror. John Birt's son is a Muslim, and there are pictures of me and my wife and all sorts of things. And but it was going to be front page news, but then it got pushed off rather tragically by the assassination of Lady Diana, um, which then got pushed to page 24
Oh
of the
my God.
Daily Mail.
So it was
So
what, 31st of August, 1997 or something like that.
yeah, something like that. Yeah. So I'd like to say, I don't want to say we were saved by Diana's misfortune, but the last thing we wanted was to be in the spotlight. And but this for the first sort of 10 years or so, my journey had been a private journey. I'd not played a public role at all. And I didn't want to particularly. I was happy to learn the ropes really. After 9/11 happened, and I remember seeing after the first plane hit, after the first one hit, I was cradling my 1-year-old son in my arms. And when the second plane hit, we were watching it at my brother-in-law's live. I thought, my God, this is gonna change the world. And I cried that night. I just knew that the blowback was going to be enormous. American honor and pride had been struck a blow, and I knew that the revenge was going to be immense. And I say that as somebody whose mother is American. I know the American mentality from the inside. They would never accept that kind of blow without repaying it 10 times or 100 times. So I knew that it was going to change everything and how Islam was seen in the West and so on. So at that point, I did decide to get much more publicly engaged and began to write. I began to get involved in advocacy. It took us for the community. It took us all the way into the European level. Some things that I did in the noughties, engagement with governments on these issues that cropped up after 9/11. And I'd like to think I went in with the right intentions, but with hindsight, I think it was also naive, because over time it became clear to me, let's say around about 2006 or 7, although I was engaged for another four years or so after that, that it was a political exercise. It was a political exercise in trying to divert the problem into theology and culture, and not into geopolitics. That was the basic problem with it. It was the idea. When the British dealt with Northern Ireland, they didn't ask the Pope to issue a papal bull. And this is kind of the difference of thinking that we were thinking about, that a fatwas of peace would actually solve the problem, and that was the kind of delusion that we were dealing with. But it was a unipolar world. America wanted to remake the world in its own image after defeating the Soviet Union. There was only one way, really, and it was the American way, and everybody had to follow that, including British Muslims. And so I basically thought it was important to kind of turn away again from public engagement. And it took a kind of strange direction. By this time, I was working in publishing with Cube Publishing, and I was very committed to the idea that convert communities, I believe every community has to write its own history. Because if you don't write, if you don't have a sense of your own past and you don't create your own narrative history of your own past, then you're doomed to let other people write your history. And they're going to write it in ways that you don't like. And that's certainly true of converts, right? Converts have been portrayed over 800 years in this country as renegades, as Turks, as terrorists, as eccentrics, you name it. Okay, every insult or disparaging moniker you can think of. So it's very important, I think. So one of the things that I began was the first book I commissioned was a biography of Abdullah Quilliam, who is a kind of, now he's famous, I think. I like to think he's famous amongst converts. But back then, 15 years ago, nobody knew who he was. And commissioning Ron Jeeves to write the first biography of him was an important first step in beginning to recover this longer history. And since then, I've kept on this as a strand of my work as a community historian. I've written 3 books about this first community. One of my longer term projects, which I'm seeking some support really, is an 800-year history of British peoples converting to Islam since the time of the Crusades. And it seems odd to have sort of turned back towards the past, but I felt very much it was one way to anchor the convert community. After all, we if you take a long view, actually the last 40 years or so has been a golden era for conversion to Islam in this country. There's been far more people who converted in the last 40 years than converted in the previous, 7 centuries. So we have relative problems of growth at the moment. And we need to find ourselves and organize ourselves as a community, I believe now, not just as a convert care sector. Convert care is a precursor to actually building a community per se, not an isolated community, but a community among other Muslim communities. And we all will serve the Ummah where and when we can, Ummah as a whole, and serve each other, but we still need to organize ourselves. And so in this whole period, I'd in the late 90s, I'd always sort of picked up an interest in Sufism, at least academically, when I was at SOAS. And when I was in the Tablighi Jamaat, actually, I took bay'ah with the Amir of the Tablighi Jamaat, Maulana Inam al-Hassan, who died in 1996, but he was a Chishti sheikh, but it wasn't a regular tariqah. There was no regular instruction. All you would do is just follow the program of the Tablighi Jamaat. There was no specific Sufi instruction. I studied it more at SOAS, got a more view of sort of the different strands of Sufism in the Arab world and the Ottoman world, the Persianate world, the Indian subcontinent, and so on. But then in 1997, me and my wife, I think my wife actually, maybe it was 1998, we actually took bay'ah with an Anglo-American Shazali Sheikh, Noor Keller, in Jordan. We were among the first of his students in the UK. And at the beginning, we were very happy with it. But over the years, let's say over a period of 15 years or so, very, very slowly, almost imperceptibly, really, it began to change. It got bigger, and then some abuses began to sort of crop up at the margins. And looking back, we were too slow to act. But eventually, things got to a head. I wasn't directly involved in that. It happened more in the group space in Kharabsha, which is it's a suburb of Amman in Jordan. The abuses were at their most pronounced at the center, the community around the Sheikh himself and his lieutenants. There was a crisis in the late 2010s, particularly around corporal punishment and abuse in a school run in the community. But there were also lots of problems in how women were really, really treated like objects, really manipulated by other women, actually. And it's a complex thing. I can't go into the whole story, but there's a public letter which we wrote, I co-signed amongst others, which was published in 2022 on the Muslim Matters site, which sets it out properly. But basically, there was an attempt to force reform within the group. It was acceded to, and then there was sort of a 180-degree turn. Everything was denied. The whole inquiry was shelved, and it was denied that any wrongdoing had happened. At that point, maybe half of the followers left at that point, including in the UK. So I think the other problem was that there was the Sufi movement I joined was associated with a movement that some academics call neo-traditionalism. So this is the movement that emerged in this particular form, emerged in the West in really the 1990s. It was a reaction to Salafism in some ways, and it was saying that actually the true Islam can be found through adhering to the late Sunni consensus in theology, law, and mysticism, and that there are scholars who embody this late Sunni consensus authentically. They have the chains of transmission. They are still, despite modernity and colonialism and everything, secularism and everything else, they have somehow embody its spirit, which has not been cut off. And so this movement itself went public after 9/11. The Americans positioned the movement as good Sufis versus violent Islamists and Salafis, basically. So they were the basic, quote unquote, the good guys, if you like, the good Muslims fighting the bad Muslims. And that's how they were publicly positioned and promoted in America. And some scholars, in that period, rode that wagon. They rode the wagon. Some kept their distance. A lot of them rode the wagon. So it's suddenly, Sufism being quite marginal and quite looked down upon in the 80s and 90s, it had this huge wave of promotion after 9/11. Now, I mean, at first we thought, of course, there's a problem with extremist theology that kind of anathematizes other Muslims and has a sense of perpetual warfare and all of this. And of course, we went on board with that. But over time, it became clear that there was a kind of game of theological divide and rule going on here that was very, very, very so collapsing complex questions into labels, basically. And the labeling was used to, like a form of McCarthyism, it was used to control people, basically, either to kind of promote people or to shut other people up. It was like a political operation, basically. I mean, I'm simplifying it, but that was the gist of it. And I think, there are quite a few, I wasn't the only one, there were quite a few of us who said, actually, this game of promoting Sufis as the good guys, it is a political game, and we have to pull away from it to save ourselves, to save our souls, actually. It's not the right thing to do, to actually, be part of such a political operation. So I think that began to come to a head when Trump came to power. Some of these sheikhs had become close to the Republican Party and the evangelical Christian movement in the United States. In the UK, some were trying to get close to the conservatives. It was very political. And basically, this combination of being politically compromised and there being spiritual abuse within Sufi orders was like a double whammy. It was like both the public and the private aspects of neo-traditionalism were going through a sort of crisis. And so both my wife and I actually had become, by this point, pretty disenchanted and disillusioned with the movement. I mean, we love the teachings. I mean, who doesn't love Imam Ghazali? Who doesn't love, Imam Ibn Ata'illah and all these fantastic, amazing giants of the Islamic intellectual tradition, right? So we were in love with them, but we didn't feel we had a home in the present day. We felt all these people who've been our teachers had sort of compromised themselves. And so that was a bitter pill to swallow. And I think that became even more apparent in 2023 and after with the Gaza genocide, because these same figures that we've been involved with were basically silent on the genocide. And it was heartbreaking. There's a lot of private attempts to get them to say something, but they were too embedded to actually take a stand. And it was heartbreaking, and that's in the UK and in North America. And by this time, it was clear that actually that became what clearer and clearer was that the kind of Islam that the Americans, the Europeans, and the Israelis had wanted for a long time, and this included the war on terror and before and after, was a kind of compliant Islam under the America umbrella in the Middle East. One that didn't ask any questions, didn't cause any trouble. It was a political operation. But it didn't just work in the Middle East or the Muslim world. It was working in the Muslim diaspora in the West. So in other words, anybody who was too politically outspoken, was rocking the boat, could be labeled as an extremist. Those who sided with the authorities in, anathematizing these people would be the good guys. And it really wasn't more complicated than that when you boiled it down. So we all feel that the Gaza genocide is what we call in Islam. Dr. Farah al-Sharif has coined this term, this idea that Gaza is a Farouk. Umar ibn al-Khattab was called al-Farouk. So what is a Farouk? A Farouk is a discerning standard through which right and wrong are made absolutely clear. So if you don't say anything about Gaza, you stick quiet, it breaks your interest to say anything, you turn your head. I know what you are. We know what you are. If you take a stand on Gaza and you're prepared to sacrifice for it, just a thousandth of what the Gazans are going through, then we know who you are. This is what I mean. It divides the population. Okay, and so I think it's created a new opportunity for us to recover our principles. For 20 years, we've been censored through the war on terror, censoring our political language, our ability to organize, our ability to protest, our freedom of conscience, our freedom of religion. They've all been under attack. They still are under attack, but I hope that the example of the people of Palestine has given us some courage. One of the things that Imam Ghazali says in the Ihya Ulumuddin is that courage, shuja'ah, is one of the pillars of good character. There is no virtue that courage does not enlarge and ennoble. Any good quality that you have is magnified by the quality of courage. That's why it is the pillar of good character. And we need to talk again about courage. Courage should be something that's morally infectious. So if one person takes a stand, it will encourage others to take a stand, And so I feel very much that as a convert that, I have moved away from my old world. It's true. I'm very much enveloped in the world of the Ummah. And I don't know how much I can act as a bridge, 37 years on. I mean, the community's changed out of all recognition. When I converted, maybe there were less than 1 million Muslims in Britain. Now there's more than 4 million. Back then, the vast majority of them were migrants. Now, more than 50% are British born. It's a very young population. They won't even know, most British Muslims, they won't even know half the things I'm talking about. They won't even heard of them. Just the other day, I had to found myself explaining what the Bosnian War was to somebody because they'd, never really heard of it. So, that's just the reality of getting older. One thing that, as I said to you earlier, I want to end on this, that I'm very concerned about is to help build a stronger sense for a convert community, a community amongst communities. We work with anyone. We're not isolationists, but we should organize ourselves to provide support where and when we need it. So one of the things I wanted to mention at the end is the National Convert Survey I'm doing with the Ayan Institute in London with the support of the Convert Muslim Foundation and the IERA, Islamic Education Research Academy. So it's the largest national survey of converts. And this will give us a really comprehensive picture of why people are converting to Islam, what backgrounds they come from, how they converted, but also their experiences inside the Ummah and how it's been for them. What have been the highs, the lows, the good, the bad, and the ugly? So far we've had a fantastic response. We're just coming to the end of our data collection phase, which ends at the end of this month. And hopefully the report will be out in November. That's our goal, aim, and aspiration. And we're going to tell a story of highlights, good practice, but also we're going to, in a very clear-eyed way, look at some of the challenges as well, with a view to improving and making things better, for us to self-organize so that we can solve our own problems, inshallah. I'm a big believer in that. And I think we have the capacity now. I'm sure that the figure is going to be somewhere between 150 and 200,000 converts, something of that order. So that's a very sizable population. And I think that's enough for us to organize and at scale and do things to solve our own problems, inshallah. So I think I'm going to end there. I hope didn't go on for
and of
too
course
long.
to encourage everybody to fill in, complete the survey. Perhaps you could kindly send the link again to us so that we'll pass it on in the Convert Club. Can people find it online? Anybody who's right now with us, who's not in the Convert Club WhatsApp group? How can they find the survey if they want
online. If you Google,
perhaps you can put it in the chat.
I will do. Yeah, I will do.
Okay, brilliant.
Yeah.
And while you do that, quite a few questions, and I'm sure people have questions. Thank you very much for your frank discussion and your courageous discussion and sharing of your personal journey and your most personal moments and things like that, and reactions, family, etc. Are you, and also your, what you experienced on the Sufi path? I mean, that's quite scandalous and shocking. What happened to that group now? Are they still operating? I mean, this is a very famous person who's translated or written The Reliance of the Traveler and, Quran translations and things. So under his watch, these things happened. I mean, are they still operating? Or probably he couldn't take care of everybody and he's busy in his own right, I presume. But it's shocking. We could probably do a whole session on that alone.
I think, well, no, I mean, this is the whole point. There's no regulation. So, of course, they just continue in business. That's just how it is. All you can do is, and they have the protection of the royal family in Jordan, which helps them. But I think the only aim we had was a limited one, was that we would have credible information online that anybody looking at the group could have easy access to, and that's all you can do. So
yeah, good.
We had the Middle East Eye. They did an independent investigation. They went out, journalists went out to Oman and actually interviewed people who'd been victims of the cult. They did their own due diligence. So having that major report itself, we wanted to say, look, this is going to be an independent investigation, and they drew their own conclusions. That was published before we published our public letter. The public letter, which is on the Muslim Matters website, is quite long and detailed. But what I will say is that every sentence in that letter is backed by two pieces of evidence, whether that's audio recordings or whether it's emails or something like that. So everything's got evidence. The problem we had was that the victims of the movement complained after us and said, actually, you just showed the tip of the iceberg. And the thing was that we couldn't tell the whole story because we could only put things in the public domain that were absolutely and unimpeachably evidenced and nobody could challenge it. We weren't investigators who could go, and trauma specialists who could go and talk to the young people who'd gone on to drugs or had left Islam or were having suicidal ideation. We didn't have the skills to help them. And we feel bad about that. And there's some work being done to help them. But in terms of publicly, not everybody's also ready to tell their story. You can't expose them either. They're just trying to recover. So the
Yeah,
thing
sure.
is that, we put into the public domain what we felt we could put into the public domain.
It's
It's a
probably.
very difficult thing to get right. But
Do
you
you
have to
think
have,
it's something to do with when there's like almost like an artificial community being formed in some country around various cult leaders, so to say, that it can end up in becoming a cult rather than a spiritual movement because they're all dependent, they're not in their natural home circumstances. It's completely unlike, for example, Sufism practiced in Morocco, or alive and thriving in Sudan, or where it's part of daily life and everybody's with their families and not vulnerable, isolated, far away
yeah,
from their
I
family.
think the minute you have any movement, not just Sufi, but any movement that's going to cut you off from your family, that's a red flag right
Yeah,
there, or cut
yeah,
you off from your friends.
yeah.
Um, or tells you that, it's only our way, every other scholar in the world is deviant, except, it's us.
Yeah,
Things like this, But the thing is that the more pernicious thing is when, in Islam, where something starts well and it slowly goes wrong.
mm.
It was obvious at the beginning.
Yeah,
Sometimes things go bad. That's true. Movements have a beginning, a middle, and an end themselves, like organisms. They don't always survive. They also sort of die in their own way. Movements, I mean, in groups, they're not eternal, are they? So they also have a life cycle. So I think you have to be aware of that as well, because often movements will want to say that this movement represents the entirety of Islam, which is not true. But they kind of, when you're inside a group, they want to make you feel that they represent everything about the faith.
yeah.
And
At the center of the
obviously,
universe.
this is one of the main things I would want to pass on to new convert, which is that don't have one teacher, have multiple teachers, so you get a rounded view of the tradition. It may be a little bit confusing to hear different interpretations, but you should be exposed to that so you can actually position yourself and you understand where you're standing within the kind of schema of interpretation, shall we say, that are available to people who convert to Islam. Because there are different emphases and different interpretations that are possible, and
Absolutely.
you have to
And may
find
I
a
ask,
home within that.
have you found a new sheikh
I
in
have,
recent?
I
You have?
have,
Mashallah.
yeah,
Where is
yeah.
he based?
He's actually also in Jordan, weirdly,
Oh,
but
really?
I guess that's a coincidence. But
Interesting.
the polar opposite of the old
Yeah,
figure I
lovely.
was with. Just a kind of like a cuddly granddad.
If ever you come to London, we could introduce you to somebody you probably already know, Sheikh Babakir,
Yeah.
who's here where we have moved to in this new area. We have moved, but
Okay.
within London, North London, Northwest
Okay.
London, and there's a wonderful Sudanese Sheikh who
Okay.
does Hadra and reading Dalal al Khairat every Saturday, and we're in walking distance.
Okay.
Alhamdulillah.
Sounds wonderful.
Yeah, to come by whenever you on a Saturday starts at 7 o'clock.
Okay.
It's glorious,
Mashallah. That's fantastic.
inshallah. And yeah, no, so many interesting points you covered, and I mean also this, how certain movements get instrumentalized by politics, by geopolitics. In the end of the day, you enter a Sufi tariqa or any spiritual tariqa way for the salvation of your soul, not to be instrumentalized and utilized for some political gain. So that's a really weird one. But
It's a difficult one because that's sort of like you're just a little like cork bobbing in the ocean, aren't you? If the current goes in a certain direction, all the little corks, all you and your friends all get pulled along in a certain direction. It takes a certain degree of self-reflection to try and swim against the tide. But
yeah,
sometimes it's important to do that because just because you're in a group, it doesn't mean it's necessarily going in the right direction. And sometimes you have to be prepared to say that not that I left the tariqah or I left the group, but the group left me.
You know, another thing is,
The tariqah left me. You
yeah,
understand what I'm saying? What I mean
yeah,
by that?
yeah, absolutely.
It,
You know, you kind of move on in life type of thing. It's, you know, you're
yeah.
evolving and it might not work for you anymore and then whatever. You know, one thing you said on the courage, you know, on standing up for Gaza, for example, not everybody um goes out and is political, because once you do, you're faced with a huge amount of backlash. I mean, I remember when I converted and it became a scandal in Germany, and I was just fighting the press from morning to night. I didn't have a quiet, peaceful moment to myself anymore, you know, for for a long time. So, you know, it's some people deliberately don't engage in politics because it eats up their inner peace and things like that. I hear you on the other hand. So how do you balance this? It's very difficult.
I don't, this is the thing I've struggled with myself is that I don't think we can have balance. Okay, so what do I mean by that? I mean that 1 minute you're trying to focus in your prayer and your dhikr and you have peace of, you're absorbed in your creator, in your remembrance of your creator, and your heart feels at peace and you're in that moment. The next minute, you know, you go downstairs, you open your phone and you see a child whose arms have been ripped off, and you feel anger.
Yeah.
So the thing is that both of those things are right. Both of them are right because
Yeah.
they're what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from you. That if you didn't feel any anger at the child, seeing the child, you didn't hate it in your heart, there'd be something deeply
Yeah.
wrong with the
That's
person
true.
who felt nothing. So we know that actually the alternation of our state from peace of heart to anger is just, where does Allah want us in that moment? Where is it that we're supposed to be? What
Mm.
is it that we're supposed to be doing? So actually the alternation of states is part of the
Part
reality
of
of
life.
life.
Part of life. Yeah.
It's
You're
part of
right.
life. It's not that you've lost your peace.
Mm.
It's that you are doing in the moment what Allah wants you to do. Allah's put you in that moment to see
Yeah.
how you will respond.
Yes. And
Do you
then
understand what I
if you
mean?
lose your friends in the process, then that's fine too, because those
But
you've got to stand up for what's
yeah,
right.
no,
I
no,
mean,
no.
this happens to us
What I'm
on
saying,
a daily basis.
you can hate it in your heart. You don't need to say anything to anybody, but you hate it in your heart. That's part of faith. But better is to speak out if you
Yeah.
can, with
Yeah.
wisdom and not in a
Yeah.
stupid way, but with
Absolutely.
a kind of strategic way,
Yeah.
or collectively. Don't do it on your own. It's a collective act,
Yeah.
as well as not an individual act, or even by stop things directly by hand. You know, when and where and however that may or may not be possible. But what I'm
Yeah.
trying to say is that I'm saying that acting in the world, you know, between our motion, our acting in the world, and our stillness and our contemplation of divine, there's no contradiction.
Mm. No, I think you're right.
The
You got
Prophet
it.
Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam moved. He moved in Hijrah. He migrated. He fought. He defended the Muslims, but he also
Contemplated.
spent his night. He was in the cave and he went in
Right.
itikaf and he stood in the night when no one else was around and
Yeah.
conversed with his Lord. So he did all of those things.
Yeah.
He moved, and he was still.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we have this idea that spiritual peace and balance and inner harmony is about the stillness. That's a moment of connection. But actually really the Prophet's way is to be connected in all states, whether you're moving or you're still. And
And you
that's our
know,
challenge.
we
That's our
also have
challenge.
great examples in the history, I think, of great Sufi sheikhs who were also great warriors, actually.
Of course. Of course, yeah, but they were still they were still remembering their Lord. That's what I'm saying, you know.
Yeah.
So we have this idea, the kind of Sufism about it's about retreat from the world, and this is not the prophetic way.
No, thank you. You were absolutely right. Spot on, I think. And yeah, and and now, I mean, what is, I like the idea of what you mentioned, building a convert community. You know, can we think a little bit more about that? how do we do that? I mean, we have the Convert Club. We need more clubs perhaps all around the country, and to connect with each other, to find out, so if I go to Birmingham, there are these kinds of converts, or we can link up with those people to connect each other. There's one way perhaps to find ways of connecting each other. What else do we need to do to build a convert community? Or
Well, look, what you're
strengthen
doing,
our
I think what you're doing is an essential part of it, So I'm so really happy that, it's a point, an inflection point. I was saying to someone the other day, mashallah, Kristiane has been punctually doing this at Tuesday night, every Tuesday night, 7 o'clock. It's the steadfastness of that
That's right.
makes community. It's the punctuality of it, that it's the point that it's always there. It's somewhere you can check in, so that is community. Mashallah, may Allah bless you. That
Maybe
is
we need more
absolutely.
barakallah.
So I
Maybe
think
we need to create retreats and things also, but perhaps just for converts,
I think there are a million things we can do.
Yeah.
And that's another great idea. So I think you're right, but I don't think this is counterintuitive. I think we all kind of know the kind of practical steps that we might want to take. Maybe what we really need is a bit of encouragement of each other, and to give each other courage. In other words, to give each other courage, encouragement, to give each other courage, because there's a lot of can be a bit of cultural underconfidence and self-doubt amongst converts sometimes to do this. But and I kind of went through the whole thing of thinking that actually maybe it was separatist and the wrong thing to do. I mean, that was said to me many times over the decades, that it was somehow, if it was done, it would end badly. And of course, I've kind of tried to indicate that some of the scholars I've followed who themselves were converts, it doesn't always end well. So, I do think that when I say a community amongst communities, I mean that seriously. It's not about disconnection. It's just about us organizing enough so that we can have, support and camaraderie and friendship, and it's there for us. But also, if we don't need it, we don't need it. But what I mean is it's there. And I think we just have to build structures.
Yeah.
The community starts with each of us, and we just need to build from there. And I'll be positive, because I think we've got, basically at the moment, we have Christianity's problems of growth. We've got problems of growth. We do have people coming in, converting to Islam and leaving as well. We need to do something about that. And, so there are people failing to find a home. So we need to maybe make reception better than it is now.
Yes, that, and the networks, building networks. Somehow improve our networking. Maybe
exactly.
we need to do events.
And I think kind of understanding we're gonna come
Number
from
of
different backgrounds. We're gonna have different understandings of Islam. We're gonna have to learn how to kind of mediate that for a sense of the common good. So, what is the common good that we can all agree on? And generally, I think that's around things like pastoral issues and things like that. But the other thing I would say is, this is a more tricky thing, may not be so easy to deal with, but I don't like the fact when somebody comes into Islam, too many people, they feel like a rugby ball put into the middle of a scrum. Everybody's fighting over this ball, trying to gain possession of the ball so they can score a try with the ball. And that's the problem, that the ball gets really cheesed off and says, I've had enough, and they just disappear. So I think converts don't want to be treated like a rugby ball in a scrum. I think they want to be given a bit of space to make up their own mind. So I wish we could find a way to teach Islam at the beginning, so that it sort of empowers people to make decisions about where they want to, what sort of version, interpretation of Islam they want to kind of find a home in later on. Maybe give them the tools to kind of make to make them feel that it doesn't have to be an anxious choice for them, if you know what I mean. So I don't quite know what that would look like, but I kind of wish that kind of pathway was there. So it's not about just recruiting the new convert into your group. It's much more about just providing kind of a pathway to which they can then make up their own mind. Because when I got to, because one reason why I was telling this story today was to say, look how many sort of changes and ups and downs I had, and I had to leave this group, and then I had to go. But now maybe that's unavoidable. I don't know. But I had burnout as well, and all of that. If somebody could avoid, if my experience, sharing my experience, helps someone else to avoid what I went through, I'd be really happy. I don't know if that will happen, but I think the only way we can find out is if we do talk frankly about our own journeys. Um, Quite often there's nervousness when converts talk about their journeys because they're worried that, oh, it's going to be a hate fest on this group or that group, and people get quite anxious about it. But this is not my purpose to hate on anybody. I'm just trying to warn people so that, hopefully they'll have an easier time or they won't make my mistakes, you know.
Very
And I
interesting. Yeah, because obviously I've written my book, and I've also been very frank, and I also had experiences with a certain group that is still very highly regarded amongst people's thoughts and minds, and yet I experienced certain issues there that made me leave. It's very
uh,
interesting. I mean, as long as it's good to open people's eyes and not because when you are very pure and on your way and you want to uh, you're thinking you're coming to this paradisical environment in this world, this pure group. Sadly, it's not always like that. Human beings are human beings, whether yeah. So one just always has to try to be discerning and try to do a lot of due diligence or um, spend time observing rather than jumping wholeheartedly into something that one doesn't really know the depths of. Yes, good point. Any comments, any questions? We want to hear from you. And obviously, I'm so looking forward to the results of the convert study. And, by that time, we'll know more how to build communities and how to, improve exactly what we're trying to figure out, how to better our community structure, etc., and what is really needed, and so on and so forth. So now, Bismillah, let's open the floor, everybody. Please post the survey link. Yeah, thank you, Nahid. Very
yeah,
good point.
I'm having technical issues. I'm going to have to send it to Kristiane later. I'm sorry.
Well, if you find it online, you might just be able to put it in the chat here, because maybe not everybody is in our WhatsApp group. That's what I'm wondering
Yeah,
about.
okay, let me just try one thing
Might
and
be
see
a
if I
few
can.
people here online who might not
Oh,
be in the
actually,
WhatsApp group.
I found it. I found it.
Well done. Well, we have a bit of time. And yeah, anybody else? I mean, does anybody want to chime in? Has anybody had serious experiences, similar experiences, or particular question? Yeah, there's a hand raised to Yahya. Samuel, Bismillah.
Alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
And Yahya, thanks for your speech, your talk. Yeah, I do have this question. It's more just expanding on that idea of the communities within communities, and yeah, just how that, because there is that sense of that you mentioned, that you don't want to create things that kind of create more of a niche and isolation. Um, so within your localized, area, because I think there is that danger of that. I mean, I just wondered, is that partly a failing of um, existing communities to integrate converts in a meaningful way, or just that dynamic and that tension that often arises between converts creating their own communities and then that being its own kind of I think you'd kind of maybe get the idea of where I'm going, because I can see that you're kind of mitigating. I guess it's kind of the community itself and the area you're in will have different resources available, and what you're able to contribute. But yeah, I wonder if the danger of um, a further isolation occurring through that. I don't know if you had any reflections on that.
I mean, basically, I think that let me answer your question indirectly, if you don't mind, Samuel. So let's say I'm a British Bengali Muslim, second generation. I might go to mosque where, you know, um, you know, the it's the heartland of the Bengali community. But at the same time, then the next day I go on a Palestine march, or I've got friends who are Somali. I have a sense of the Ummah above and beyond my Bengali community. So I move seamlessly between my home community and the Ummah, and indeed wider British society, right, in the world of work and so on and so forth. So the individual is always moving between different things. So if you take that back to converts, okay, let's say we have 200,000 converts, right, something like that. That means our community is scattered, probably about 40% of that community is probably in London. That's what the survey's telling us at the moment. So talking nearly 100,000 in the southeast. So that's a big enough group of people that you could probably have points where you can check in, and you can have structures, and you can be part of your month, your week, or your month, or whatever. So I'm not saying that you have to make it your be all and end all. It's just that it's part of who you are. It's part of what you check into. You spend time with people, you get to know, friendships and whatever. You pray together, you do some socializing, whatever, but it's not everything that you do. So that's when I say that it doesn't have to be divisive. It's just a fact of life that everybody's got different aspects to their identity, and we express it in different days through the week. So that's kind of what the idea I've kind of got. And so I'm not about talking about something that's rigid and ideological and exclusive and looks down on born Muslims or whatever, or has a holier than thou attitude or anything like that. I'm just talking about something where you could actually kind of have that meld between your culture and your religion kind of worked out, and it works seamlessly in a social space. That's very enjoyable. We don't get it very much, but I very occasionally I get to go watch a footy match with a couple of old convert brothers, and we have a real right old laugh, and it's really enjoyable. That doesn't mean I'm not married into a Gujarati family all the time, and I'm not praying at my local Pakistani mosque in Bradford. Do you see what I mean? Do you see how it works? What I mean is you're checking into different things in your life. That's not separatism. That's just how we ought to be living. So what I want is that option to be there. So whatever community is for you, that's what it could look like in your week. I don't know if that answers your question, but
yeah, no, I think it, it does, and I think it obviously, and yeah, depending, I don't know, I think there is a balance isn't there? Also between this. I think particularly with digital spaces have opportunities, but they also can create a possible not lack of rootedness, but there's the potential for that also to be isolating. I think in this time. So yeah, I do think there is potentially a failing sometimes within local communities to have that, like, as you said, you're talking about your Bengali mosque or your Somali mosque, or for mosques themselves. And mosques aren't the only spaces. Obviously, there's a need to make kind of third spaces where they're kind of beyond mosque. But I think there's obviously a lot of work to do. How these things materialize. So the more efforts and the more endeavors, the better. But I do, yeah, no, I do hear you.
I don't think it has to be dutiful and pious. What do I mean by that? I mean, it can just be enjoyable. It can just be about friendships, letting your hair down. It doesn't have to be about, mashallah, brother, let's, I mean, community is also about friendship, it seems to me. So we get that through time we spend with people in our downtime, as well as, in communities, third spaces or mosques or whatever. So I see friendship as a big part of what this is as well. Any other questions?
Anybody else wants to say something or ask any questions or comment? Don't be shy. It's a rare opportunity. Have you ever thought of writing a book about your journey?
Definitely not.
Be fascinating.
Sounds like
Absolutely
too much work.
Fascinating.
Is Ahmed has got his hand up?
Yes,
Bismillah, Ahmed.
And Naheed as well.
Sorry, I
Walaikum
thought that was
salam.
really really insightful and what have you. And I didn't want to hog because this is for the reverts really to have questions answered and put across and then coming back with something. What I wanted to say was something that you said about the intercultural mixing that we all do. I do it, everybody does it, we don't even know we're doing it. But when it's structured, we also, oh no, I don't want any of that. So I was the chair of the Muslim Scouts Fellowship. And people always used to ask us, why have you done that for? Isn't the Scouts big enough? And I said, well, it's like anything in life. When you're a fledgling and you're a seed, you need your own water structure, soil structure around you. Then you grow. And as you grow, you can go back into society, into the bigger family of the Scouts, and you're happy. And the main reason was to make sure that everybody was comfortable before they were exposed to the bigger 26 million Scouts around the world. So I think what you've just said there is ideal. We do it anyway. I resonate with certain people when I go to watch football. I resonate with certain people. And a lot of that time, there's very little mashallah or inshallah. We just have a laugh because I've known these people since I was a child. So I don't think there's anything wrong with it. And I don't think it should be seen as being, an island inside an island. We do it every day. When we go to work, we talk to certain people. When I'm at home, I talk to other people. It's perfectly natural. It's just when you label it, people say, oh, no, I can't do that. But in reality, we do it anyway. That's how we, as a communal animal, the human, that's how we survive.
Yeah, and I think stigmatizing it has actually been. I'm not saying there haven't been some convert groups that went a bit bananas and off the rails, and we have to be honest about that. And I think I've tried to talk around some of that without naming names, but I think those who know who I'm talking about. So I haven't shied away from criticisms of white convert leaders where I think they've made bad choices. But I 100% agree with you, Ahmed, that what we need is to also, not to stigmatize this very human need that people have to connect with different communities that are part of their life, and converts are part of our life. And so connecting with them in social settings is fine. And we shouldn't really make that a problem.
No, look, every community has their Looney Tunes. We all have them. Some of us don't want to admit it, but we'll poke fingers at somebody else's Looney Tunes. We all have them. You cannot, it's like a lot of the prophets were herdsmen. You have different types of sheep. You have to deal with them. So in that instance, I think that's a really good idea. And I'll tell you why. It builds strength amongst common denominator things that you go through. I cannot relate to you in any shape or form. Actually, I can't relate to most people, but that's another point. Forget that one. But I can see it, because what we don't want is this perpetual swinging doors. Come through one door and leave through the other door. I mean, that hurts me when I hear that. When I hear somebody's made a commitment, a huge commitment, the biggest kingpin that you can do on this planet, and then due to circumstances and societies and people, they leave by the other door. We should all feel really bad about that. And that's why I think the initiatives that you're doing, they're perfectly set for the audience that you are actually applying it to. I can't relate to it, and I shouldn't, because that's not my journey. But I think that the community within the community is a good idea, builds your strength, builds the roots that you need to have, and also it's a sounding off board amongst yourself, which is ideal.
Yeah, no, that's true. How about Nahid's got a question as well?
Hi, yes, assalamu alaikum. I don't really have a question. Thank you for sharing your story. I was born into Islam, but I find when I look around me, with the rise of Islamophobia, I do feel that there needs to be more white converts to Islam in positions of power in Britain to get our message across that Islam is not something to be seen as something that's threatening. I do sometimes feel that there's been a huge number of migrants from outside of Europe coming into Britain, and it could be seen as threatening for the local people. I live in Edinburgh. I live near the Edinburgh Central Mosque, and I see that, it's becoming, the area that I'm living in is becoming very Asian, very African, and and some of the so-called Muslims, I see them hanging around outside the mosque with bottles of beer in their hand, causing a ruckus, selling drugs, and you think, well, is that Islam? They go to the mosque and they're just, they're just there to meet their friends and have a muck about. They're not even listening to the imam when he's giving his Friday sermon. So what type of Islam? I mean, if people are going to be converting into Islam, what are they actually seeing? That that Muslims, that those that are born into the faith, they're not necessarily a good role models to follow. No,
Naheed, look, I just make dua that we are not, any of us are not shields from the beauty of Islam, and that we are, may God make us conduits and not shields for Islam.
Yeah.
That's all we can hope. But وَمَا عَلَيْنَا إِلَّا الْبَلَغُ الْمُبِينُ, there's nothing, no duty that we have except to convey the message clearly. Guidance is not in our hands. We invite people, and we hope that our behavior and our example is not one that's off-putting, but inshallah, hopefully inspirational, as much as we embody the characteristics of the Prophet, peace be upon him, as much as the beauty of Islam will be apparent. I think it's I understand and I've heard it many times over the years, that if we put a white convert at the front face of the community, this will lessen Islamophobia, because people will understand that Islam is a universal faith, and this is a basic premise. I have to be frank with you and say I'm not sure I agree with that. If you permit me, I'll explain why. The reason is because there are different reasons why, but one reason is that Islamophobia or anti-Muslim hatred is irrational, and it's not rational. So in Bosnia, you had over hundreds of years that local indigenous people converted to Islam, but the Serbs regarded them as Turks. They relabeled them as Turks, as foreigners. They called them traitorous seed, who had literally relabeled them as foreigners. In Britain, I've been called the P word. Now, I'm just saying that to you by a bunch of racist skinheads. I was in Birmingham.
And how would they know that you're?
No, but I'm saying that they're relabeling me. You see what I mean? It's so Islamophobia is not. It's not rational in the sense that it's not rational. In the sense the hatred itself is not rational. So in the sense that they'll move the goalpost, and they'll find another reason to hate on the convert. You see, that's what I'm trying to say. For being a traitor, or whatever it is, that's what I'm trying to say. So they'll find another reason to hate the convert. So I think that's number one. Why I'm not sure it works. But number two, I think we're going. Converts are a small part of the Muslim community, maybe 4% or something like that of a 4 million strong population. As we've been saying today, it's not an organized community. At most, it maybe has 2 mosques around the country that are convert led. It's not a self-organized community. So it's, how can I put it? Until it's in a stronger position than it is now, I'm not sure if it can lead on this issue of bridging between a 4 million strong population and the rest of the country. The way I feel, rather than saying this is a delegated task to converts, which for reasons I said earlier, I'm not sure that will work. I actually think it's a collective effort by all Muslims to find allies in wider society to argue for the sort of Britain that we all want to live in. In other words, we're arguing for the Britain that we want to see in the world, rather than other people who want to take it down a myth of a pure nation, and they have to exclude certain people. The extremists amongst them want to exclude all people who aren't white. There'll be something like 10 million people. That would be, 10 million people out of a population of 60 million. People whose grandparents came here, or great grandparents, So these are people saying, actually, your citizenship doesn't count. Now, I mean, we can't placate people like that. What you need to do is to argue for a different kind of Britain. And I think we need to just all come together. It's not just Muslims on their own with converts or non-converts. It's actually allying with anybody who believes that they want to live in a tolerant nation. And if there are problems with migration and all that, we can deal with that. But what we can't have is a kind of radical intolerance that would seek to exclude millions of people from the country of their birth. And this is exactly what they're talking about now. And so we've got to be clear that that is existential for us. For millions of people, that's an existential question. And we need to actually treat that with the seriousness it deserves. So in the town where I live, which is Bradford, we've elected in a minority reform council. So, we have that challenge with on our home turf. I'm even just thinking, what does that mean locally? Like, how do I mobilize Logan? I'm part of a WhatsApp group that's organizing a big unity march in October. The reason why it's not in the summer is because we expect there to be a lot of trouble fermented around the city. But when things calm down, we want to make a big show of unity. And it's going to be creative. It's not going to be a political protest. It's going to be people coming together saying, we belong together in the city and we respect each other. And we want to live together peacefully, and we want to make the city work. And that's what we're doing in Bradford. So, I think we have to do that wherever we are. And it's not just on converts. I think we all have to make an effort.
No, the reason why I said it, because if you take the example of the Buddhist community, Buddhism is much more accepted because there's so many white Buddhists. You don't see Thai Buddhists.
They're visible. I don't know if most Buddhists are white in Britain, but what I would say is that, I don't think this is a delicate matter. What is it that's being accepted? So in other words, if you're saying that something's only acceptable because a white person endorses it, that in and of itself is not Islamic, is it? So you can't actually, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says he doesn't look at our faces, he looks at our hearts. So he's teaching us to look at the character of people. And so we can't teach the people of Britain that we're going to just pay attention to your outward appearance. We're not going to look what's in your heart. We have to teach them that, don't we? So I feel very strongly that we can't turn that logic, we can't give into that logic of judging people by the color of their skin.
But we're living in a society where we are judged by our physical appearance.
But it's wrong, isn't it? We have
I know it's wrong, but
we have to turn it over.
But it's human nature, isn't it?
No, it's not. It's something that's learnt, and we can't placate it. We have to challenge it and turn it over. It's not natural.
Also, by the way, there are a lot of Indian converts. There are converts from Hinduism or other parts, and African converts. We don't just have white converts here.
Exactly, it's a multicultural convert community. But what I'm trying to say is that we can't give into the logic that of judgment by skin color. We have to actually challenge that and educate out of it. Don't just mean shout at people. I mean, patiently educate people out of that erroneous thinking. As Muslims, we believe that God judges what's in our hearts. So we have to start with character and conduct. And that's where we start in our appeal.
Do you think that converts should be used more? And I wonder if you have ever been approached by the government to be kind of a bridging, play a bridging function between the Muslim community and the mainstream community, or in terms of policy advice, what could help, how could they deal with certain issues, etc.
I mean,
I think we're underutilized altogether.
I don't know. I had my experience of that, 20 years ago, and governments say that, but I think I'm a bit cynical. I'm sorry. Experience has made me cynical. I mean, and through long engagement, I'm not cynical, having not engaged. I engaged there for a very long time.
Was this with Prevent?
It was in that policy area around Prevent and other issues. The governments modern British governments, when they talk about consultative democracy, how do they consult between elections? They really are not very interested in what communities have to say. They're interested in it's big corporate interests. It's moneyed interests. It's unfortunately I have to say it's legalized corruption. The way that our parliamentary democracy works today is a legalized corruption. It's a lot of money around professional lobbying, none of which Muslim communities do. Muslim communities sort of go in naively and we make the moral argument, the moral case, whatever we think that is, the moral argument. I very rarely saw that made any difference, the moral argument.
Should we learn to also do the lobbying?
I don't know. I'm very, very much in two minds about it because I feel it's gotten worse. I hate the fact we have a politics where principle can no longer easily be appealed to. I mean, it makes really saddens me. I wish there was more ethics in politics, but I see it's money that seems to make the difference really a lot of the time, and not in a very transparent way. So sorry, I know I sound very cynical, but as I said again, this is based on long engagement. I tried to play that in whatever capacity I could do to help. I tried for several years, and I came out of that experience being quite cynical about. I believe in community, but what I believe in now is community building. I believe in community. I believe in building community. I believe in us. And if government stays out of the way of as much as possible, that's what I'm happy with. They just keep out of our way. And we try to lead the good life. That's kind of basically where I am. Stay out of our way. Of course, unfortunately, government wants to interfere the whole time for one reason or another, right?
And what you had on your agenda also critique of Prevent. Do you want to quickly touch on that? Because that sounded interesting too. And you're speaking from experience.
I think I was just echoing, I sort of touched on it a little bit where I said that basically there was this idea that the problem of political violence from Al-Qaeda and other groups was primarily a problem of either dodgy theology. I'm really boiling this down now. Dodgy theology, basically, or bad theology, or cultural problems, right? Like a cultural inability to integrate on the part of Muslim communities in the West. So basically, it was a version of one or the other of these two ideas. And these are actually culturally essentialist and racializing ideas, actually. It's about collective blame of a population. That population gets labeled as risky or inherently more prone to political violence than the average member of any other population. So it becomes a kind of suspect community. And this happened before us, of course, before British Muslims. It happened in the 1970s and the 1980s to the Catholic Irish, whether they were in Northern Ireland or whether they were in the British mainland. They had almost exactly the same set of cultural assumptions and policing policies being stopped on suspicion. So tens of thousands of British Muslims have been stopped on suspicion because they look a certain way, whether that's airports or whatever. So the framework was actually first developed with respect to Catholics. Later, then it was adopted over to Muslims. So when you know this longer history, it enables you to understand that what parts of it were to do with policing and what parts of it were to do with the political operation, which was designed to kind of keep Muslim communities in a box and basically play off different factions of the community against each other. And it was a political operation. But it took me a few years being on the inside, engaging it, to understand that was what was happening. And it was less clear under New Labour, who were a bit more sophisticated in the way they'd managed that, because they're very close to Muslim communities. When the Conservatives came into power, it became much more about, wasn't community engagement, it was direct state expansion of state power and surveillance of Muslim students in schools and Muslim patients in hospitals, and different public institutions where they interacted with Muslims. There was a kind of a system put in place 10 years ago or 11 years ago to kind of make them seen as potentially politically risky and at risk of radicalization. But I've been a Muslim long enough. I remember long enough back to I converted in 1989. I remember the 1990s where basically Muslims were politically free. They didn't have these kind of restrictions on them. How did they use? They used that for brilliant campaigns like trying to stop the genocide in Bosnia, and they played their role in getting the Americans to intervene and to push the Serbs back. We played a role. When we had more greater freedom, we used it constructively. I mean, what were Muslims doing in 2003? They were trying to stop the invasion of Iraq. I mean, things would have been a lot better if the Americans hadn't gone in. Of course, nobody listened to us, but it wasn't because we were extremists. We were trying to do the right thing. I think giving Muslims political freedom will end well for this country. I don't think it's going to be a disaster, contrary to what we've been told for the last 20 years. Muslims have always marched for peace. We've always marched for justice. We are moderate people. I'm telling you, despite all the propaganda, I'm telling you, we are moderate people.
Middle way, the middle way.
We are moderate people.
Yeah.
We take a lot of crap from the government and from the press and from society, and most of us just basically turn the other cheek and carry on. That's what we do.
For sure. Have you spoken to the Reform Councillor in Bradford?
No, no, I haven't.
Maybe you ought to. Invite him for coffee.
He seems,
very important. You need to educate him.
Just mentioning about
character.
Just mentioning about the Reform character. We have a Reform member here. He didn't get elected, but I did speak to him, because according to his manifesto, he says you need to be born in the UK and served the UK in the military. I said, I tick both boxes. Can we talk now?
Yeah.
Right. So, no, he didn't come back. Now, there is one thing I would like to say, which is about how our Prophet ﷺ dealt with awkward and prickly questions. And I'll give you an example. I have a dear friend he was head surgeon of the Department of Defense in the US. It was Dr. Fauci's team. No. He sent something out on social media saying that Muslim children, are radicalized from day one. Now, I could have blown a gasket and responded to him and say, no, yeah. But you know what I said? I said to him, I'm really busy at the moment because I'm in the process of doing some work on Gaza and Bosnia, but I'm sure the other person will deal with you. Right? And I'm dealing with the genocide in Gaza, which is very similar to the one in Bosnia. And I left it at that. I did not argue with him, I did not shout at him, but he knows my stance. And it goes back to something that you said at the beginning, Sister Kristiane. Those who are your friends will stay your friends. Those who are not your friends will leave. Let them go. Let them go. Don't be rude. Don't be obnoxious or anything. If they go, they'll go. But there has to be a certain stance, which doesn't have to be abrupt, doesn't have to be aggressive, doesn't have to be in somebody's face. But he knows my stance. So if you've said we're all radicalized, then it makes no sense me doing something for the genocide in Gaza, trying to work out the casualty rates.
I so agree with you.
But
I think probably all of us have had the loss of friends in this, sadly, through the tragedies in Gaza.
So
doesn't matter. The least of our problems.
Yeah,
how can we help more? Yeah.
Because I serve with the British military. I was the token Muslim in everywhere I went, the token one, which was okay. But I had this open door policy saying, just ask me what you feel like, because I know you're going to do it. I know you're going to talk behind my back. Just tell me what you think. And when you have those open, candid conversations, they either like you or they don't like you. But what you stick to is the dawah which is given to you by our Prophet ﷺ, which was narrated to him by our head computer, and you leave it at that. And I don't argue. I don't get into big long-winded debates, because I just don't want to, because Islamically we don't. You give the message, you move on. There's 8 billion people on the planet, so I do find that your attitude towards doing things has a massive effect. And it also goes back to whatever we do day in, day out, we're giving dawah, either the right one or the wrong one, but we're giving it because that's what people see. And you'd be surprised, the most sophisticated, educated people on the planet are very, very, they've never really been exposed to Islam in any shape or form other than the propaganda they see on the TV. So you have to start from a point. Well, it's like explaining it to a child. Yeah, that's where most people are. If you want to try a microcosm, try a lot of the Americans. Their knowledge of Islam is literally everything barbaric. And if you try and redo the Kool-Aid they've been drinking for years, you're just going to make yourself an idiot. The best thing is to just explain, well, what parts of Islam do you want to know about? And then at least I have a starting point. But getting annoyed and frustrated with Iran.
Ahmed, after 9/11, so many people bought the Quran and wanted to find out what an evil religion this is, and then actually ended up converting. So it's once you look into behind the headlines, then your eyes open. But most people don't get to that space, to that place, sadly. But sure, I do agree with you. Now, Yahya said, Sheikh Amin. There's a Sheikh Amin here. Sheikh Amin.
I may be wrong, but you left a WhatsApp message that made me think you might be in the meeting. Sheikh Amin Buxton.
Oh, I see. Yes.
Oh, Buxton's from Edinburgh, from the Edinburgh Central Mosque.
Yeah, he should chip in if he's in the chat. He should chip in.
Maybe he's not here.
I don't think he's there.
Maybe he's not here with us.
Maybe he's watching the footy then.
Yeah, probably. Well, Jonathan wanted to make a little comment from his own personal experience. What are you going to say?
No, I just before I was outside of this community, I thought the Muslims were slightly crazy people and dangerous.
Until he met me.
Yeah, and it's only by being
all my crazy friends. And now he's one of them.
It's only being
rubbed off.
It's only being immersed in the actual day-to-day process of being a Muslim that you can really understand it. And that's so sad, because it's very hard in a soundbite or in a short documentary or in a book to really understand.
It's true. It's only by experience. By immersing yourself.
Yeah, it takes years to really come to the point where you just said in this talk, it's really all about the heart and the attention. And it does that, you don't get that day one at all. And I it's so sad that this religion has to take so long for somebody to really get their head into it. And it's like anything complicated or layered, it's just really difficult for people who are outside to get it, because they're listening to all these sound bites on social media and so on, and it's really hard to know how to deal with that, for us as converts. Sorry.
I do feel sorry for people converting today, having to go through the whole social media thing. I'll be honest with you, we didn't have that problem when we converted.
Yeah, you're right. We were reading books, weren't we?
No, but I mean, like, it's such a free for all,
Very
it
different.
Really is.
But even being a Muslim,
right.
even being a Muslim, I've met some really bad Muslims in mosque, in business. I mean, really evil people. I hate to say it. And you wake up and say, actually, this is like any normal community, any normal society.
You have the good and the bad.
X%
Ahmed was saying.
Really, really bad, and Y% are okay, and then the rest are really, really pious.
And you were saying also about the converts are actually quite slightly different people, and how we could the connecting between mainstream Muslims in the mosque and, for example, when you go to the mosque, your experiences in the mosque are. So, like, in front of him,
I'd love to sit down with the young Hizb ut-Tahrir guys, 30 years ago, who accused me of being a spy, made my
Yeah,
life a
that sort of thing.
misery. I'd like to sit down with them and say, look, I understand why you're angry. I get it. Like, I don't think I understood then, to be
Yeah.
honest, even though
Yeah.
like I've been a Muslim for several, 5 or 6 years, 4 or 5 years at that point. I was still very politically naive at that point. I mean,
one experiment that might work if everybody in the UK converted for 1 year with the idea that at the end of the year they could revert back. It'd be very interesting to see how many people stayed.
why don't you give them 5 years, because they've got to go through they've got to go through a few ups and downs first before they can come out the other side. That is a bit, strikes you as a tad optimistic, huh?
Yeah. No, it's just a mind experiment. I always do lots of these thought experiments as to how you could really get people inside, to see the inside by getting in. And then you could leave at the end if they didn't like it.
It's like life swap.
Yeah, life swap. Life swap.
Life swap.
Anyway.
Yeah, but you were also saying that converts are actually quite different people, as we have a lot in common, obviously, at the core, our core values, but culturally we also.
Well, I think converts go to the root of, I'm just, who am I? They go to the root of Islam, whereas the born Muslims, they're not so, they haven't, it's like maths, they haven't gone to the first principles of maths. They just, it's almost like it's on rote. So
I think there is a kind of a caveat to what you're saying, Jonathan, which is that I think that a lot of Muslims, born Muslims are sort of severed from their tradition.
That's what I meant.
They have to actually really rediscover / kind of convert. And quite a few over the years, I've met many people sort of quote. I'm using scare quotes here, but converted, if you know what I mean. Like they embrace
and they
Islam.
join our convert club, literally.
They embrace Islam out of conviction.
Yes,
because they, either they weren't really brought up with much Islamic education, or the Islamic education that they had alienated them for one reason or another. They couldn't relate to it. They felt all at sea. And then somehow they go on a journey and they kind of fall in love again and have a different reason for wanting to be Muslim, which wasn't the one they grew up with. Sorry, I don't want to bring parents into it, but it wasn't one they grew up with. So I've always regarded those people as sort of fellow converts, if you see what I mean, because
100%.
I do believe that you've got to, you've got to know, why. There's one important thing I want to say, by the way, which is that it's not only that you should know why you're a Muslim, and it's not just an inheritance that you got from your parents. But I want to say something else to converts here, which is a verse of the Quran in Surah An-Nisa that starts like this. It says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu. Okay, oh, you who believe.
Oh.
Right, it's not redundant. The repetition is not redundancy. Okay, the commentators say what it means is that after you've accepted faith, you're still on a journey, and you need to strengthen your faith, and you're going to go through ups and downs or whatever, but your journey continues. So this is why I thought it was important. I was going to open with this verse actually, but this is why I think it's important that we understand when you take the Shahada, that's not the end of your story. That you've just fired the starting pistol.
Yeah.
Your journey of faith is to continue now. And that's why I think it's so important that we have these sorts of meetings where we talk about, some of us who are a bit long in the tooth like me, we share our sort of journey in the hopes that will help other people to see, there are ups and downs and whatnot, but you know what? And you get tested in all sorts of ways. And this is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tests us in this world.
It's like getting closer to a wall. If you halve the distance, you never reach the wall.
Exactly. So I just think we accept, and hopefully sharing our experience will encourage other people who are maybe newer to the faith, inshallah. It's all going to be all right in the end, inshallah.
That's right. That's so true.
By Allah's mercy, inshallah, it will all be okay.
Yeah, indeed. 100%. Like the Lady of Norwich was saying, all shall be good. All shall be
Inshallah.
good, inshallah, at the end of
Yeah.
the day. Well, what a beautiful and enriching talk. And you know, we must do more of these. It's just wonderful that you took the time and effort and care to share your eventful journey and touch on so many different strands, each of which could become a session in their own right. So if are there any other comments? We've got perhaps another 8 minutes we could spare, and then it would be 2 hours, to full 2 hour session. Steffi, Bismillah. Oh, thank you so much for a great meeting. That's a good comment.
If
Thank you.
Steph has a comment, she should, or if Steph has a comment, she should say something.
Yeah. Well, a lot of thank yous. A lot of thank yous there.
Maybe we'll just want to go watch the footy.
Yeah, probably. Everybody preparing now. But yeah, if there's any other comment, any other question, please go for it. Sunni, Ursula, Armine, Hasib, married to a convert. Catherine.
Is it Catherine? I forgot her name now.
There's Catherine Clay.
Oh yeah, you know, she said something.
Yeah. Well, that's fine. There's Ursula. Well, just everybody saying thank you.
Okay, no
Thank
problem,
you.
inshallah.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank
I guess
you, Yahya.
No,
So
it's my
let's resume.
pleasure.
Let's resume after the converts survey, which everybody just, you know, please fill in that form. You've got the link. It's really important. Jonathan and I will do it as well. Some of us have already done it, and please, you know, help the survey to be
I
comprehensive.
appreciate you promoting it, Kristiane. It's really important that we get a good buy-in.
Yeah. And I'd love to hear, you know, the results, and you know, we'd love to.
I promise I'll come back and talk about it when it comes out.
Yeah.
How about that? Yeah.
How we can, you know, contribute to making the world a better place for us converts, inshallah.
Inshallah. Where there's a will, there's a way. Let's do it together, inshallah.
Yes, indeed, 100%. Well, lovely seeing you, and God bless, and inshallah see you maybe at the Convert Care weekend. Are you planning
Inshallah.
to go there?
Salams to everybody. Please keep us in your du'as, inshallah. All of you take care.
Do you want to please close with a beautiful dua? Let's close the session properly with a dua.
Okay.
By yourselves. Thank you for yourself.
ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. Ya Allah, we thank you for all the innumerable blessings that you have given us. You have blessed us with faith. Oh God, increase our faith in you. Oh God, make us only reliant on you. Oh God, make our goal synonymous with your goal. Oh Allah, make us love your prophet, the greatest of all prophets, and make him the lodestar of our lives and our model in all matters, large and small. Oh Allah, make it easy for those who've converted to Islam in this country. Oh Allah, keep their feet firm in this grand religion of yours. Oh Allah, let them not be isolated. Oh Allah, let them not feel loneliness. Oh Allah, but let them feel support. Let them have mentors and friends who can be with them when they need help. Ya Allah, and unite our hearts in a good purpose of supporting them, inshallah, in their journey of faith, Ya Allah. And if we have differences, Ya Allah, between us converts, let that not be a means of fruitless division. Ya Allah, enable us to see the good in each other, Ya Allah, to forgive each other our faults, Ya Allah, and join our hearts in a common purpose, inshallah, to strengthen the cause of the convert community in this country, Ya Allah, and to inshallah uphold the light of Islam. Ya Allah, make us exemplars of your beloved Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Allah, imbue us with the noble character of our beloved Prophet, peace be upon him. Ya Allah, make us exemplars, ambassadors of your faith, the final word sent to all of humanity, Ya Allah. O Allah, O Allah, lift heart the hatred and rancor and myth and Islamophobia and enmity and hatred from the hearts of those who think ill of your beloved faith and of your messenger and of your final community. Ya Allah, bring fair-mindedness into their hearts, Ya Allah. Allah, open their hearts to your message, Ya Allah. Let us not be a barrier to that message, Ya Allah, but make us a conduit for that message, Ya Allah. Ameen. And nothing is possible except that you make it possible. Ya Allah, our works can only be accepted through your mercy. Ya Allah, accept from us our works, our paltry works, great and small. Ya Allah, make our efforts sincerely for you alone. Ya Allah, you know what is in our hearts, Ya Allah. So let us remember that you see everything that's inside of our hearts, Ya Allah. So make all our matters and all our affairs that we do truly for you alone, Ya Allah. Expunge hypocrisy from our hearts, and Allah, expunge self-delusion from our hearts, Ya Allah. Show us truth as truth, and show us falsehood as falsehood, Ya Allah. Oh Allah, remove confusion from our minds and from our hearts, and give us clarity of purpose, and in coming towards you, moving towards you in this life and in the next. Oh Allah, accept our works and accept these prayers and accept Kristiane's great efforts to build a convert community. Oh Allah, bless this amazing convert care space that she has established over many years. You know, make it multiply, make it fruitful, make it a means of good for her in this life and in the next, Ya Allah, and forgive us our sins. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun ala mursaleen walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.
Ameen. May Allah reward you for all that you do. What a beautiful prayer. Thank you.
Alhamdulillah. May Allah accept our works, inshallah. Jazakallah khair.
Thank you.
Take care, inshallah.
The recording will be with you shortly.
Jazakallah khair. Take care, inshallah.
God bless everybody. See you again, inshallah, next time, next Tuesday. Same time, same place. With Sheikh Haitam, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Take care and thank you. Yeah. God bless. Assalamu alaikum.